And I spent a lot of time thinking about why these MSPs get stuck at the 2 million mark. And, we could argue 1.5, we could argue 2.2, but nowadays, kind of post COVID, 2 million seems to be the new million. I used to be able to say for 15 years, everyone got stuck at a million. Now we seem to kind of force our way to 2 million a little more frequently. Either one of you have any ideas on why people get stuck at that 2 million mark?
I sure do. That's part of the reason why I sold my company, was that 2 million mark. What you're going to find, what I found, was that the team that I had that got me to that 1.5, that got me to that 2 million, isn't the team that I needed to take me past that $2 million mark. I needed a sales team. That was the number one thing that I really needed. And I knew I did not want to build one. And I also knew that a maintaining MSP for me was a dying MSP. And so that's why I decided to exit.
All right, we're going. So we will go with Harry. Good morning, guys. How we doing?
Doing great, Josh.
Outstanding. And, Gary, every time we talk, you're telling me about the feedback noise, and I hear it as well. There's certain things I can't control, so I will keep on trying to ban all noises in the house. But everyone else, sorry for the background noise as we go through today. Ryan, you just got back from a trip. Where were you?
I was over at Stonehenge. We traveled around Great Britain for a little bit, seeing all the sacred sites, taking baths in the Roman baths. It was a great trip.
Awesome. And Gary, you just took a quick trip somewhere. Anything fun to report?
Yeah, I went to Mammoth for the week, or the first part of the week. So yeah, that was super fun.
Outstanding. And Christmas is over here. The boys are back where they're supposed to be in the world. I wish they were here, but it's so much nicer just to be able to focus on all things IT, small business. I mean, isn't that what it's all about, guys?
Don't we just live our lives around that?
I think so. Well, I've been pondering something a lot over, really as we get through end of year.
Did it hurt?
Through December and January. Now we're in the front of the year, and that's a really busy time for Bering McKinley, and people really paying attention to the vision system, and they want to get their goals in and start building those milestones. And I spent a lot of time thinking about why these MSPs get stuck at the 2 million mark. And, we could argue 1.5, we could argue 2.2, but nowadays, kind of post-COVID, 2 million seems to be the new million. I used to be able to say for 15 years, everyone got stuck at a million. Now we seem to kind of force our way to 2 million a little more frequently. Either one of you have any ideas on why people get stuck at that 2 million mark?
I sure do. That's part of the reason why I sold my company, was that 2 million mark. What you're going to find, what I found, was that the team that I had that got me to that 1.5, that got me to that 2 million, isn't the team that I needed to take me past that $2 million mark. I needed a sales team. That was the number one thing that I really needed. And I knew I did not want to build one. And I also knew that a maintaining MSP for me was a dying MSP. And so that's why I decided to exit.
Interesting. All right. So that I have to pivot into a sales-driven organization was a big piece for you.
For sure.
Yeah. How about you, Gary? Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think like the direction that the industry is trying to push into is this kind of like strategic advisor role, right? And the ones that are talking about that are typically going to be over, the $2 million mark. They're trying to look for separation from being a commoditized IT shop versus, a truly strategic MSP. And I think what happens is you start to work on your business a little bit. You start to do some business planning. You start, you've heard on a podcast or read a book or, in a peer group or whatever, and they're talking about these bigger thoughts and bigger strategies and, working on the business. And those are the ones that kind of figure out like, oh, hey, there's like this whole other thing out there. Like, yeah, we have tickets, we have projects, we have, support that we need to provide, but like building the business is like actually my new job, right? And the ones that don't get that message, they've never heard it, they're in their own echo chamber, they don't have anyone on their team really pushing them, their one-man show, whatever the thing is that's holding them back, is really kind of the limiting factor. So I think, it's just a mindset shift, from working in your business to working on your business. And I think that's part of what Ryan was talking about is, you got to work on the sales department, right?
Yep.
You don't do sales, you build sales, and that sounds scary. And I've never done that before. And where do I start? And do I want to spend all this time and money, at this point in my business? And that's really, I think, the mindset shift of someone that's really going to be strategic and, be that business owner versus that business operator.
For sure. And I think that the skills in a leader that take you past that $2 million is also a little bit different. You can up to 1.5, you can still like, I don't know, maybe I'll work a ticket, right? Like maybe I'll still like get my hands in it a little bit. When you get past that $2 million mark, your techs are going to get pissed at you if you touch a ticket. The whole team's going to get pissed at you. Okay. You're going to be sending shockwaves down the organization that you don't trust them. Okay. And you're just trying to fulfill your inner nerd, right? Like that's not what it's about. But at the same time, you have to go fully to embrace, I call it my CEO hat, right? You have to embrace that CEO hat. And then you have to say, okay, I've probably gotten away by managing a dispatcher and maybe a bookkeeper or something like that up to 2 million and a bunch of technicians. Okay. So there are people a lot like you. When you transition into that, getting that sales team, these are a lot of people that might not necessarily be a lot like you. And I didn't want to build that skill set.
Yeah, I think we're zeroing in on, or you two have zeroed in on some of the thoughts that bounce around in my head, which is we get stuck because transitioning into being sales driven, and that kind of tired old boring phrase, but so relevant, of not working in the business as much as you work on the business. I think those are the two really big themes. And to kind of, I spent 80% of my career focusing on IT companies getting stuck because they didn't figure out the sales riddle.
Yeah.
And I had lots of what I thought were kind of evidence points or anecdotal points to say, well, Bob and Carl and Brian, they figured it out. They figured the sales out, and that's why they won. And then I started talking to some of them on an even deeper level. And it turned out that they are very strategic thinkers. And I think like that book, The E-Myth, I haven't read it in many years, but it gets, kind of regurgitated to me, on every new conversation I have with a newer business person. But I feel like I recall it, but I don't recall the phrase strategy in there very much. And it might be in there, so don't flame me if I'm wrong about that, but it really kind of makes that point of working on the business. I don't think I even really knew what that meant, to the degree that I think I do now, which is strategy.
Yeah. Yes, and policies and procedures. I used to get so frustrated when I actually was in the company, and I went to this course. We've all gone to some sort of, hopefully all gone to some sort of like training course on like how to run a business or something. And mine was a 6-month intensive thing. And they kept saying, work on the business, not in the business. I'm like, oh, great. Like I didn't know what that meant. And then over time, I was like, oh, I'm supposed to be putting together the policies and procedures for things. I'm supposed to be building the scalability so that I can I can identify the roles, I can fill in those roles, and then just keep doing that till I don't want to do that anymore.
Yeah. Ye-
Yeah, look, sales is a big part of every business, right? So it's not it's not actually to me the defining factor of whether or not you're being strategic or what, if that's really what you need. Many companies, especially in the IT world, don't have sales departments and grow past the 2 million. Or at least they wouldn't define it as a sales department, right? So it's so funny because it's like the principal led sales is really kind of like the best you know output you can get up into a certain point, right? And if you can actually scale that in a way where you can grow pretty far, and how you scale that is doing more of that and less of the other thing, right? So, most of these IT companies, I like to call them accidental entrepreneurs, right? They kind of fall into it. They're good with a computer and they're good with people. If you got those two things going for you, you can get pretty far. You'll hire, a couple of guys, what they need to do because you do it. So you can kind of scale a little bit there. And then you can kind of talk to customers and you can kind of scale a little bit there. Where the accidental part kind of starts hitting them is when you can't scale more than yourself, right? Like you're kind of maxed out, so therefore you're training less, you're talking to your clients less, and you're just kind of, you're getting these referrals because people really like you, and then you just got too much business and not enough resources. So the way you scale, well, one approach is how you scale the sales there is you kind of delegate the technical work, right? And that's actually comes a lot easier because you don't consider yourself a salesperson. You're a tech person, right? You're just kind of good at sales. You hear this a lot. So I think the strategy around how you're going to grow, whether it is through a sales department or building more kind of client referral kind of requests, or account management, whatever the thing is. And by the way, it's all of them. Um, really starts at the point where you decide who's running this thing. Is it me or is it my clients? Right? Are they the ones dictating what we do and when we do it and how we do it and why we do it? Or did I make a decision and create those policies and procedures and train the people and delegate and get out of the way? Right? Um, if you haven't really thought about that, you're probably just an IT shop trying to be an MSP. If you have thought about that, but you're having trouble executing, you probably haven't gone through a strategy session and business planning. And if you're struggling with that, you probably haven't realized you're not going to be able to do this on your own. You either need a partner, a business coach, a mentor, an advisor, a consultant, a peer group, whoever that thing is, to kind of get in a room with you for a couple hours a week, if at least,
Yeah.
and not think about the tickets, not think about that sales call, not think about your worst customer, your best customer, but really objectively look at your business and saying, who are we? What do we want? How do we get there? And what do we do now?
Yeah. So, Gary, I think you raise a really good point about a business coach, something along those lines. I think that was one thing that I accidentally did early on was I got a, a business coach for a little bit. And then I was part of it was a peer group, but nobody else was in IT. Okay. They were just business owners. Cause guess what? We're all, I like to look at Breaking Bad. Okay. Breaking Bad had a lot of HR problems. Okay. And the only difference between your business and Breaking Bad is that theirs was illegal. Okay. And pretty much all the other problems, you have supply problems, you have personnel problems. Okay. So that we could title this something like that, like how your IT company is like Breaking Bad. And so one of the things that I found is like fabrication shops, like they had a somewhat similar model to an MSP, a metal. And these are things that business owners don't really think about. They're like, oh, I'm so special. You're probably not. Okay. Your model probably isn't. I'm sure your staff is amazing. I'm sure your product stack is great, right? Those are kind of like our non-negotiables. And then you as the owner getting, how fortunate could you be to get an insight from somebody else in a different industry, maybe there's a secret sauce in their industry you could bring into the IT industry because IT's never thought about it before.
Yeah, so I do some consulting outside of the IT world, and some of the clients that I talk to, um, they get they get hyper focused on what the other guy's doing. Oh, I got to be like him, or oh, I don't want to do that. This is what happens there, or whatever. But they're looking at it in their own industry. And what happens is if you pay too much attention to your competitors, you become your competitor.
Yep.
Um, and that might be an okay thing, right? Like if you have no original thought, or no ideas or whatever, you just want to copy and paste. It's not a horrible thing, but it will get you stuck because you don't know what they're doing. You're just reacting to what you see, and often they don't know what they're doing either. Um, and yeah, so one approach that I really recommend is for business owners to get into different industry peer groups. Entrepreneur organization is a great one. So if you're above the $1 million mark, you meet with other business owners, you get into the forum, you get to talk about everything and anything. But you get to see different different business types, and man, just bending your brain in a different way intentionally actually unlocks what you've been trying to figure out internally, right? It's like, oh, okay, they're doing iPhone cases. How does that apply to my MSP business? Well, you know, one thing is knowing the fact that you could do 10-20 million dollars in iPhone cases a year might be an interesting thought process in trying to figure out, like, how does an MSP get to 10 or 20 million, right? But you'll never think that unless you kind of expose yourself to a group that's outside of your organization.
Yeah.
So this is kind of the stuck point of, like, who are you talking to that's not in your company today? And if that's nobody, that can change for the better.
We'll be right back with more, but first, here's a quick message from Bering McKinley.
Most MSPs are constantly busy, chasing tickets, projects, and fires. But without structure, it's hard to know if the business is really improving. Vision from Bering McKinley is the system that helps you work on your business, not just in it. It connects leadership strategy with daily execution. Vision aligns people, process, and performance, creating clarity and rhythm from goals to results. And the Vision app brings that structure to life, helping you create policies, track goals, review KPIs, and collaborate with your BMK consultant all in one place. Behind it all, Jetson AI, your assistant inside Vision, helps you find answers, generate insights, and take action faster. With Vision, you gain visibility, accountability, and measurable growth. You're not guessing, you're improving. Vision, Jetson, and the Vision app, your path from strategy to results. Start transforming your business today.
All right, let's get back to the conversation.
Yeah, there's no doubt. I think about when we get into, and I think, like, Evolve, that peer team that ConnectWise owns now. I've known of Evolve and been very intimately familiar with them for since 2001, 2002, when they were HTG. And I'm not here to sing their praises, but I'll say this: that leader was talking about more than just the tactics of running an MSP. And as a young consultant, I created all my value for what I defined as value for myself with, I know every tactic in the MSP. I know every metric. I know everything. And that's all I wanted to talk about with my clients and my peer team clients. And I think it was Gary, you coming into a couple of those peer team meetings, and you weren't confused by the material. You were confused, like, what the hell are we doing here? Because it was this really big balance of education with a little bit of accountability. And I have to say, again, for people listening to this, it took me years to understand what the hell Gary was talking about. And I mean years. And Gary's not an easy guy to ignore. So it wasn't through I wasn't listening. I just wasn't getting it, where it was switching from that tactical mindset to that strategic mindset. And even the difference between those two words really confused me. And when you get into these non-industry peer teams, well, now, or peer groups, you can't talk tactics, not at the level you would with your peers. Therefore, you have to talk about strategy and what you want and where you're going and where you're stuck mentally, not just, I can't figure out how to do my tickets better. I can't figure out dispatch better. I can't figure out how to price my stuff better. You're having a whole different conversation. I think that's a lot of, that's almost entirely what Bering McKinley is now, is all we really want to talk to you about is your strategy. We'll give you all the tactics. That's already built out. And watching that, especially near the end of 2025, going into 2026, just watching the clients struggle in a really awesome way with answering this really stupid, silly question. Let me ask you guys, how easy do you think it is for an owner to name what they want? I think it's easy or hard.
Hard.
I thought it would be the easiest thing in the world until I asked myself what I want.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I did? I started naming off all the things I didn't want.
Mm.
And so when we have clients come in, and so far this week, we've had, a client from Atlanta, a client from Philadelphia, Monday and Tuesday, a guy from Brooklyn's coming in. We spend about half of our day determining what they want. And that's mind blowing for me.
Yeah, it is mind blowing. This is the accidental entrepreneur.
Yes.
And this can last a lifetime.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't, for me, personally, I was that person. I got what do I want to say? I got asked to leave my MSP at one point, prior to starting my own, politely, but it was just time for me to go. And I agreed. But you're 25 and, scared and, don't even have a cell phone because it was the companies. So it's truly the accidental entrepreneur, right? It's like, oh my God, what do I do? And I called one of my friends that was a vendor for, we were selling, I think it was like CBON services at the time. And I'm like, dude, I don't know what to do. I just got let go. He's like, oh, that's great. I'm like, right, it's great. How is that great? And it's just fear, right? It's just, and the best outcome there is just get going, right? But the problem with just getting going is you never asked yourself what you wanted.
Right.
I just didn't want to be broke. I just didn't want to lose my house. I just didn't want to,
No.
have my girlfriend think I was a loser, all these things. Right. But, ultimately it's like, when did I step back and ask that question? What did I want? Well, probably 11 years after the fact of starting the business. And the answer was, I don't want the business anymore.
That's a tough thing.
Yeah, that is like, when I look back, it was the best thing for me at the time and I'm better for it. But that's probably not the answer that you want to get to.
Right.
Well, and I've talked to a couple people who have gotten there. Okay. And I remember it always tends to happen the same way from the people I've talked to. I was driving home from work one day and just said, I'm done. That seems to be the pretty normal way this goes. And it just happens one day and you're like, yeah, that's it. I mean, it took me 2 years to sell after that, but I remember the day.
Yeah, you started setting goals when you were done running your business.
Yes. Oh my God. I totally did. I totally did. Not only that, but that's when I actually started running it for sale. And then all the metrics made all the more importance because I'm like, oh, somebody else is going to be looking at these. I have to make sure everything matches and is good.
Yeah.
So here's the cool thing, Josh, right? It's
Yeah.
like when we get these guys in our strategy sessions and we, open up the Vision app and get into the goals and talk about that company goal, that high level 5 to 10 year thing. What's the overall kind of, desire for the majority of these guys?
When they finally get there, and this is no bad on them, and I'm just praising them, not shaming them. When they finally get there, it's, I want to have some sort of sale value, right? I want to have some sort of sale value. And I'll let you finish your point though, because I could go off on that quite a bit.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think there's a flavor of that. And, I love getting there. I like getting there.
Yes.
But it's the most obvious thing, right?
Yes.
You own an asset, you want to sell the asset. Like a lot of people don't get there because they don't even actually believe they own it. In fact, they don't. They have a job that has their name on the door, right? But let's say we fast forward past this kind of 500,000, a million, million and a half, even 2 million, maybe even higher, right? Maybe they've thought strategically and they go, no, I've seen other people sell. I know that's a thing. They haven't really come up with the plan, but we get them in the room and they quickly or not so quickly get to the point where they're like, okay, I'll sell. Not today though, not ready. I don't know when I'll be ready, but let's say 10 years, 20 years in the future. Great. But then if you ask them, but why, right? Why sell? This is where it gets real tough for people. This is where you can turn a 1 hour conversation, finally getting to the point where they could realize that there is an exit or light at the end of the tunnel or however they want to position it to, but what's after that? And that is where the fear lives and the uncertainty lives. And the cool thing about Ryan and my journey, which was the company dictated that we were done. So therefore, we didn't have to make the decision. We got to then think deeply about, okay, what happens because I can't do this anymore? What happens after? Now we get excited, right? Yeah. Now imagine if that was flipped. Imagine we get deep into the thought and strategy of like, okay, I'm going to sell someday. Here's the date. And then after is really what I want. And after looks like I'm going to Europe for the first time. I'm going to, move to my kids, city where they go to college so I can watch all the football games or whatever the thing is, right? Where you have zero time to do it today, but all the time to do it tomorrow.
Yeah.
And then that's where you anchor in on your goal and what you need to do today to get there. And it becomes a completely different thing.
And Gary, that's really true. And in my early kind of evidence gathering and working with clients, there's so many resistance points along the way. One of them is, and this is where I have to kind of reset my expectations of a day or a day and a half with the client, because the resistance point of, hey, what do you want? And getting them to even say like, I'd like to sell, and then getting into the why a little bit, that can take the whole time. And where I say I have to reset my expectation point is, I'm so used to, if I spend 8 hours with somebody for the day, I want them, like, we checked a lot of boxes. We did a lot of tasks today. We got a lot done. And I'm getting used to the idea that, no, that 8 or 12 hours we just spent, and you really anchoring in with emotion and feeling towards what you want and why you want it, that's the biggest victory I could have, helped a client get to.
Yeah.
Still learning to celebrate that because I'm so used to task. And the clients are used to, hey, Josh ran us through the numbers and taught me about this thing, and we learned about that, and that's where the value was. Getting that mindset shift is really hard. But, at the risk of rambling, the most common thing I hear, and this goes back a long time because I've been having some version of this conversation a long time, when you're starting to drive them, the first time you say, what do you want? the most common thing I hear is, well, I don't know that I'm ever going to sell. I don't know what I do with my time. Like I've heard that, guys. I am not exaggerating when I say I've talked to well over 5,000 owners at this point in my career. If I haven't heard that answer 4,000 times, I would be shocked. And if I'm wrong on 4,000, it's 4,100. And I wonder, and I'm not a psychiatrist, I don't understand anything about anything in that regard, but it's kind of like I kind of call that as like that's your safety mechanism to not shoot for something big. The other thing I hear is, I don't, money. I'm not all about the money, and that's like nails on a chalkboard to me. It's like, well, then go work a job. What's the point of doing this? But I try to meet people where they're at. But what do you think about those two things that I hear so often? Even the primary one of, well, I don't know that I'll ever want to sell. I don't know what I would do.
I was that guy.
Yeah.
I remember being that guy because I brought a lot of heart into my company. I honestly, looking back, think the best thing, the best part for me of my company was building the team. And it's not just the internal team, but the external team, your clients, as well as your technicians and your staff and your thing like that. I loved that. And the money just seemed to follow. Like you do right by people, they'll pay you, right? I mean, it's kind of simple. Um, and it wasn't till it was COVID and it started taking a toll on me. Like getting a team through COVID, I have to just say, whoever did that, whoever out there was responsible for the team getting them through COVID, my hat is off to you. That was not easy. Okay. And nobody really recognizes how difficult that was on the team leads, on the owners. And I remember it was all in the same breath. It was COVID's pretty much done. My team is safe. And then I just said, and I'm done. And I was like, huh? Who just said that? But, and that's when I had to start really, like, I cared about the numbers before just because Josh told me I was supposed to. And I was like, okay, well, I want this company to keep going. So Josh told me I'm supposed to, so I'll do that. Mostly I did that. And, but no, Josh, I think you're right. I think I'm not the only one that brought a lot of heart into their company. I mean, you guys wouldn't be at $2 million if you didn't bring heart into your company. You wouldn't be selling if you weren't. And like Gary just pointed out, that owner sales, that owner primary doing the sales, that's a powerful tool. If each one of us could just clone that capability in ourselves, maybe that's what we should do. We should start an owner cloning thing, but we'll just call it an internship program instead, without all the goo and the fancy tanks.
Yeah, no, I think, yeah, that heartbeat is right. It's, I've used the phrase brute force a lot in my career. It's through brute force you got to 2 million. And I think that's heart, that's gumption, that's giving a share. That's, all the wonderful characteristics that make somebody up. But no, I agree with that 100%.
I guess the statement that you're hearing from owners is like, I don't care about money.
Okay, they don't have any.
Let's yeah, let's kind of shape that up a little bit, right? Okay, do you come from money? Do you have plenty of money in the bank? Do you lead a basic lifestyle that you're content with? Cool, right? Ask yourself in a different way. What could more money do for you and your business? What impact could it have on your family, your kids, your grandchildren, your niece, nephew, whatever? If you start to think strategically, right? Like, this, it's so funny. Like, it's so hard to do, right? Because what happens is you take 5 minutes, you start to ask yourself these questions, and then you just want to go right to work. You pull up ChatGPT, you start putting stuff in, you let it give you 500 words, and then it's like you're off and running. You've downloaded a new app, you've got this organizational tool, you're going to, conquer the world based on 5 minutes of thought.
Yeah.
And by the way, you already were self-limiting before that 5 minutes. So did you solve that as well as the problem that you were having with the question? Probably not, right? So I feel for every business owner out there that says money's not what motivates me. I don't know what I would do if I didn't have this. I don't It's not that I don't believe them, because there's certainly people out there that those two things are abundantly true, and things just work in the way that they're working. And man, I've met many business owners where I'm like, how do you, like, you don't even seem like the guy, but their form of just getting things done and the team that they have and the industry that they're in, it's just the right mix. And if you have that, great. I'm not here to say that that's not good. That's amazing. We're really talking to the people that are stuck. We're talking to the people that don't know how they got here. They don't know why they're doing what they're doing, and they don't know how to get out of it, right? And for those people, those are probably still the ones that say, "Oh yeah, money's like whatever," and they're making a good enough living, or I don't really know what I would do after this, and it's really just like they haven't really thought about it. So again, strategy is not a 5-minute session thinking about this while you're in the shower and, on a Tuesday. Strategy is, I'm going to take a 3-hour flight to Illinois to sit down with Josh and his team. And for the first 8 hours, Josh's going to stare at me, waiting for me to tell him what I want more than anything outside of this business. And that might take 8 hours. It might take 16 hours to get to that point. But once you're there, then your engineer mind can kick in and you can start to reverse this whole thing down to who's the next person I need to hire to achieve that goal. What do my clients need in order for us to grow that piece of business? What do I need to stop doing in order to get out of my way? That's how strategy works. It starts with this bigger picture, this bigger thing that doesn't even seem possible, and that's a good thing. And then breaking it down to something that you can actually execute on. And that's how you get unstuck. And it's like massive commitment, right?
Yeah. Yeah, massive commitment for sure. As you're, talking about that kind of that moment of inspiration, you get in ChatGPT and you feel like I just solved a problem, or I'm about to, create a really great opportunity for myself. I'm reminded of a call that I just had in the last 24 hours with a really motivated owner. He's just all in on the Vision operating system. He's all in on, building out the plan. And I'd gone out to his city, before Christmas, and he just, like a duck to water, like he just got it. It just clicked, and his conviction, was exactly where it should be at that moment, while he was learning this new thing. And I said, all right, well, how are we going to keep this momentum? Would you like to, schedule a 1-hour call every week? You want to schedule a kickoff call with your team? What do you want to do? And he's like, you know what? I think I got it. And 6 weeks later, this morning was my call with that team. And he did a great job. He explained it at the level he could at that moment, but he was trying to kind of bring along this, really fresh kind of newer leadership team, and watching them try to wrap their heads around it at the level that the client could explain it, and the level that I could explain it, because I'm not perfect by any means, but just, these young people, these non-business owners, they were doing the best they could to understand the difference between just doing and planning what we're going to do to get some outcome. And it was fun to watch them because they were getting it. But one of the people on the call, very, engineer minded, you could just, he's not wrong, but you could just tell that antsiness, that frustration of, can't I just go do something? I just want to go do it. Why do we have to do this? He didn't say those words, but that was, what you could read from this person. And it just made me think, like, that's all of us. Like, that's every owner, that's me, that's all of us at some point of saying, maybe I can just go do enough things, line up enough tactics to get to where we're trying to go. That taking that beat to say, what do I want and how do I get there? Now I'll go do. I feel like that's really counterintuitive to a lot of people. Instead it's just go do something.
There is no doubt that there's very little difference between a business owner and, someone that works in the business. It's a mindset, is really the only thing. And for those people that maybe are new or maybe are young and inexperienced in setting goals, it does need to be bite-sized, right? It does need to be an action item with a, time associated with it and a metric or an output that you can look at to see whether or not you did that right. So, ask, if you're struggling to think strategically, you can almost guarantee that you've never hired anyone that thinks that way because you haven't valued it yet. Right. So it's like you hired them to install servers, set up some cloud, infrastructure, take care of tickets, all the, blocking and tackling things that, are needed, but without direction on why those are even being done and what the outcome is and what the expectations are. They're just a mini you, right? They're just you with not as much experience and, and that's a good hire, right? Worst case is they're not capable of doing the things that may or may not even be the right thing to do. So yeah, for these business owners that, I've got it, no problem, let me go lead. Yeah, for sure. But it's not going to be easy.
Right.
So expecting them to understand, anyone to understand what you just learned, is going to be a challenge. So, making it understandable in a way where they, they can do their job, but they're accountable for some outcome is probably the quickest way to get them to start thinking strategically. What did I do today and how did it affect what I was trying to get accomplished?
Right. Ryan, having, sold your business in the last few years, as you participate in this conversation, do you kind of have that nice warm feeling of, thank God I don't have to do all this shit?
Actually,
Or are
what I
you
was
turning it
thinking
into
was
something else?
I was remembering when I learned that lesson and that lesson. And the one that's really sticking out to me is going back to your call, and the guy was like, I got this, I can go explain it to my team. And for about a week, you're probably going to be able to say something intelligent around that before it starts slipping from your mind. And they're going to take months to be able to absorb some of these basic concepts. And that's if you have an amazing team, it's just human nature. And so this is where I found, honestly, Josh, I loved like the dispatch training. It's like, don't even talk to me about dispatch until you're done with the Bering McKinley dispatch training. Okay. I want to see the certificate on your wall, and then you can come to me. Until then, you have a subject matter expert out there. Go talk to them, because my dispatchers turned over. And I think that's a common thing, because for some reason, our industry just doesn't like value them as much as they really should. I think there's a lot of unsung heroes in the IT world because our technicians want all the money. And so for me, what was helpful was that moment where I'm like, I don't have to do this. I need to be out selling. And that's where we're going to tie this all up with a nice little bow, because what we're going to be able to say is, this is why you care about money, because you need the money to pay your team. If you don't care about it for your jets and your yachts, because all of us have those, right? And so if you don't care about it for that, that's fine. But care about your team, right? Make that extra margin on them to give them that Christmas bonus and make them happier, right? Pay that dispatcher a little bit more so that they stay and you're not constantly retraining them, right? And I found it helpful during the turnover to say, hey, here, go ahead, go to this training. And then let's have those CEO level conversations. And then when they started getting paint your calendar green, when they started getting these concepts of, let's not just always assume that we want to put our highest paid technician on every password reset ticket. Like, those are things that, like, you can calculate the ROI on.
Yes, yes, yes. Yeah, well, good chat, guys. I think, we started out this call with the kind of why do people get stuck? And, we kind of anchored on a couple of ideas around the sales driven and the strategic and, having a plan of where you're going. And I think, I don't know, how did we do? Did we get somewhere with that conversation?
I feel like we definitely did. I feel like if I was a business owner and spent 42 minutes listening to this, I should have came away with at least one thing.
I like the sound of that. Gary, what would you add to the why businesses get stuck?
Yeah, I think that really the thing is you got to ask for help, right? If you're sitting there as the operator and if you've never asked yourself who's the visionary in this company, or you don't think you can be that, you gotta go ask for help. You gotta find someone that can help guide you in a way that can get you out of that mindset. So, and I truly think it's a mindset. I mean, if you can figure out how to fix an Exchange server that's been down for 2 days and rescue a company and, figure out why your firewall is getting rebooted by some kind of attack or whatever the thing is, you can figure this out. It's just literally just a different way of thinking about something. Um, and you can use all the cool engineering kind of ideas and all those things to build your strategy. It's just a different thing to think about. So it's not as dire as you'd think.
Yeah, good words. Yeah, it is not yeah, let's be really clear. This ain't rocket science. It is just a little different way of thinking. And I used that analogy with this team earlier. It's, hey, you're just building a project plan. For some reason that seemed to kind of click for them. It's just like, well, what's the objective of any project you ever did? Get the server installed, get the new desktops installed, move the office. You had an objective. What's the objective of this business? Let's pretend it's a project plan. And let's just work down some milestones to let us know we're on the way, on the right path. Now, instead of phases, let's have some initiatives that we're going to say we're going to do. And then we'll get down to the tasks or the action items. It ain't rocket science. It's just a whole different pattern of thinking for sure. Well, right on, guys. Well, listen, with that, let's go ahead and wrap her up. Appreciate having you guys both on here today. And everyone else, if we earned it, give us a like, a share, a subscribe, and definitely comment below. We love reading those and responding to those. But for everyone else, see you later. Bye.
Thanks.